Excited to go to the Stanley Fencing Gates hotline. And Swain, welcome to the show, a guy that would have cleaned up in the NIL era. Dane Bradshaw, former Tennessee basketball player with the SEC Network, will be on the call and joins us now. Dane, how are you doing?
I'm good. I know there's one deal I would have had, and that was Sawyer's Chicken Fingers back in the day. I know you guys know how to go back with you to that one.
I remember. That was a spot where Casey Clausen took me, Brett Smith, and Meacham and set us down and schooled us about playing football at the University of Tennessee, man. A lot of good memories. A lot of good memories there.
Yeah,
a staple on the strip.
Tender's going to be touched. I had to learn after my freshman season that going there once a day wasn't really going to get my body fat or playing time up. So I had to learn to get that out of my diet.
Yeah, you're on your way to being the round mound of rebound.
So, Dane, this is a pretty cool deal. We have these secretive scrimmages that take place. Tennessee just had one, in fact, a few days ago. But this will be a pay-per-view game. You're going to be on the call for it. And it's two of the biggest names in college basketball right now as well. It's Tennessee and Gonzaga.
Yeah, this is going to be really cool. It's the first time they've ever done it. A lot of it has to do with Coach Mark Few at Gonzaga. He's been pushing this for a couple years now. And then when COVID happened, they kind of took a back seat. But it's going to be in Frisco, Texas, near where potential player of the year Drew Timme is from in Dallas. And so he'll have a chance to sort of have a little bit of a homecoming opportunity there in an arena that seats about 4,500. So, I mean, you've got two teams that it's not far-fetched to think could be matched up in an Elite Eight. Gonzaga fans are hoping that this is the year. Every time they break through. Okay, they broke through the Final Four, and they got the national championship. But the one thing that one box they hadn't checked in this dynasty they built is a national title. And I'm sure they go on record, and as do others, saying, well, that doesn't define them. And that's true, but they're competitors and they're winners, and every single roster that comes through there, specifically this one, wants to be the team that overcomes that final hurdle for Gonzaga basketball. And then on the flip side, you guys well know, Tennessee has had some awesome things to cheer about. They've had some terrific regular seasons, the SEC tournament championship last year. But in terms of the NCAA tournament, Volunteer fans are ready to break through and get to that Final Four that they hadn't been able to get to in program history.
Where do you think this Tennessee basketball team will improve? They're pretty good last year, man, especially at the end of the season, man. Peaked at the right time. Of course, the exit toward against Michigan, wasn't anything that we wanted or expected. But do you see this team being better? And if you do, where do you see them being better?
I think it's got to be down low. This was a very talented Tennessee team. Kennedy Chandler really came on great towards the end as well. Zakai Ziegler, of course, was a surprise, and Vescovi's continued growth. But the one thing that they were missing last year was just that inside-out presence and their ability to impose their will on other teams in the paint. That doesn't mean you got to have Grant Williams-type player, but you can't be so reliant on the perimeter game as they were in that Michigan one. And this will be a nice test for them. I mean, these coaches are going to play it like it's a real game. They're going to start the way they would normally start, rotate players how they normally would. And Gonzaga has Drew Timme, big man down low, again, that's probably going to be on his way to his third All-American season. We've also got an LSU transfer, Efton Reed, that'll be a big man down low. And so that'll be a good test for the likes of Olivier Kamwa, Uros Plasic. And let's not forget, I mean, I think it's easy to forget, but, Kamwa was playing his best basketball of the year when he went down with his injury middle of the season. I believe it was at South Carolina when he got hurt. So that's kind of the, one of the guys I look at that says, this isn't the best player on Tennessee's roster. Nobody I would say is the MVP, but I think you could argue Kamwa is the most important player because it'll be by committee, and they'll rotate multiple fives in there. But I think he's got to be the one that really leads it. And from what I've heard so far in the preseason, that's been the most pleasant surprise is how well all of the big men have played down low.
You say you've been hearing some things in the preseason. And Tennessee fans, we like new toys. Tennessee has some new toys, whether it's a transfer or a freshman. What are you hearing about some of the new players that have joined this roster?
Yeah, I haven't put my eyes on them yet, but I think they're living up to the expectations so far, and we'll see how it goes. I think in that Michigan State scrimmage, the speed and physicality, that's always a wake-up call for a freshman, no matter what the sport is. That typically is the biggest eye-opening experience, is just how fast the game is played. And so these close scrimmages against quality opponents like Michigan State, like Gonzaga, I think is just invaluable for guys such as Julian Phillips, the five-star recruit that, he's there's between him and Tyreek Key, those are guys that will take some pressure off Vescovi and Ziegler. And we all know, Josiah Jordan James and his skill set. And those guys are great at what they do. But I think you just got to have some guys that are some of those one-on-one break-you-down type players. I sound like a broken record on Tennessee basketball, but that's where a Julian Phillips type guy can really come in and help them, because Tennessee is great when they're getting 15 assists a game and everybody's touching it and it's passing and cutting. But who's the guy that can kind of just go get their own when all that gets taken away against an elite defensive team, a really physical team, and Vescovi's not able to get an open look off these double staggered screens and all that? Who can just go in there and get you a bucket? And Julian Phillips appears to be one of those versatile scorers, as does Tyreek Key, that can give you that option.
Dane Bradshaw is with us. He's going to be on the call for the pay-per-view game. We'll tell you how you can watch that coming up Friday night, Tennessee against Gonzaga down in Texas. And you mentioned replacing Kennedy Chandler. How does Tennessee do that? And maybe there's the answer right now and then as the season goes along, but what would be your best guess there, replacing Kennedy Chandler, who was obviously so important last year?
Yeah, he was, and he had his ups and downs, but he did some things that just nobody else on the court could do with his speed. And he's not going to go down in Rick Barnes' defensive Hall of Fame, but he had some long arms and good instincts, and he would gamble some, and he'd get you 2 or 3 steals a game. I mean, they were always winning the turnover margin because of his activity. But naturally you look at Zakai Ziegler stepping in and taking that. But, the secret's kind of out on Ziegler. He's not going to be able to surprise people anymore. And him kind of playing somewhat of a supporting role last year, and now he'll have the keys to the car and be able to lead this team. I think he can do it. I do think one of the positives is, if it's a little bit too much too soon for him, Tyreek Key can play the point guard spot. Santiago can come over there and play it. Josiah Jordan James can come in and do that. And so I think that's where you look at Zakai as the most natural point guard of them, but they can move some guys around. I think their most dangerous lineup is when they have several of those guys all playing together, where you got 3, sometimes as many as 4 point guard type players on the court at one time.
One of my favorite players is Josiah Jordan James. We saw him just transform into a different player during the season last year. That Texas game where he missed the shot to win. After that, man, he was a different player. Not a lot of talk about him that he should get right now, but he is a very, very important piece of this team. Dane, what do you expect from him this season?
He is. He's the glue, and he does so many things. I'll start on the defensive end. I mean, he's what allows them to be so versatile on the offensive end. It's because when you want to play small and you want to get that speed and that passing and that shooting on the offensive end, usually you have to give up something defensively. Josiah Jordan James has such great size that you don't have to give anything up when you move him down to the 4 spot. Hell, he'll play the 5 for you if you need to. And so when you move him there, it's like, hey, we can do this type of lineup offensively and still hold our own on the defensive end. And he really creates a lot of mismatches and does a lot of the little things. High IQ player. I don't think he's ever going to be, and it's okay. With that 5-star badge that he had coming in, I think people typically assume, all right, how long is it going to be before he's leading the SEC in scoring? That's just not who he is, and that's okay. Him being the best version of Josiah Jordan James is plenty enough for this Tennessee team. They've got great weapons around it.
Dane, do you know how Josiah did not make the all-defense team in the SEC? You're connected there with the SEC Network. What happened?
Oh, man, it's been a while. I'd have to look back at that list. I think what can happen on some of those is people look at the stats and the flashy plays,
Yeah.
I think back to somebody who did it all. So this is probably a bad example, but Yves Pons. I mean, he had highlight reel type blocks every game, and all of a sudden people start paying more attention to you as a defender when you do those types of things. Whereas Josiah was just a much more workmanlike, like you really had to pay attention and have somebody point out to you, hey, you realize nobody ever scores, and he can switch on anybody, and he can do this and that, and it's stuff that isn't going to make sports sense. And so I think maybe some of that just matter-of-fact, solid defense maybe hurt him a little bit, but I think he'll be rewarded this year if he continues to do that, and such a key player. And I think, vocally, I think he's continued to improve too. And whereas Santiago Vescovi is vocal, but probably a little bit more by example. And I think Josiah's voice is going to be really important this year. Even though Zakai Ziegler has kind of emerged as the heart and soul of the team last year, despite being a freshman, you got to be prepared. Okay, well, what if he has a little bit of a sophomore slump? What if he's not himself right away? And that's where Josiah Jordan James is almost your safety net for anything on the court, off the court, in the locker room. He can really do it all.
Dane, basketball expert, SEC Network, you the man when it comes to the hardwood. But, man, how have you been taking in this football season for Tennessee?
And it's a beautiful thing, isn't it? I mean, I know how important it is for the recruiting experience. I like you, I'm sure. I hosted I don't know how many recruits, and that recruiting trip changed, and the experience was a complete 180 based on how relevant football was, if they won or they lost. And so if you can't sign a kid that came to campus after this past football season, you weren't going to get them in the first place. So it's so cool when all the sports are clicking and everybody's happy with for each other. When I got to Tennessee basketball was kind of the odd person out. Pat Summitt had it rolling with the Lady Vols. You guys had it rolling under Coach Fulmer, softball, all types of things. And so when everybody's holding their own, it's a beautiful thing. You can tell the camaraderie amongst coaches, amongst players is something else. And it's just it's amazing to see how quick of a turnaround it has been under Heupel. And I've gotten to live it as a player on a much lesser scale. And I'm just so happy for these players, whether it's the stars like Hendon Hooker or role players that are now finding their niche. What a difference it can make where you feel like your career has been brought back to life and based on a coach's system. And like I said, I experienced when Bruce Pearl came in our junior year, and a lot of us were left for dead. We were all bust and lacked confidence. And then, man, you get the right coach and the right system, and all of a sudden it's like, hey, maybe I can do this. And it's just I think they've handled success extremely well and been very mature about it.
Good stuff.
Yeah, Dane, I think at the time when there was that transition you were a part of, you looked around in the locker room and said, well, some of us still have to have talent, right? And you found the right coach to help get that out of you, and everything else took care of itself.
Right, yeah, I mean, and it's like, all right, we got 10 guys here, and this isn't to bash previous staff. It's just a right fit and that sort of thing. But you're like, all right, you got 10 to 12 scholarship players from a basketball standpoint. Like, all right, we're all like ranked top 100. Surely we weren't all bust, right? Maybe a couple of us. It just is what it is. But it can't all be bust. And but it's easier said than done. But you put players in the right position to be successful, and it's just really that's kind of a soft spot in my heart to see some of these players. You guys know the football roster better than I do, but I'm sure the stories are endless of just guys that were counted out, that took the hard road and that, probably were down on themselves. Other people thought that, oh, yeah, he was a great high school player, but just didn't work out, when he went to Power 5. And now they're getting their redemption. And as fun as it is, as fun as it is to have success and have people proud of you, that redemption component to it is sweeter than any of it. And I think there's so many of these players, whether it's redemption from their earlier career in Tennessee or redemption from wherever they transferred from, it's fascinating to watch.
Very well said. Dane Bradshaw, you can hear him on Friday night. We will tweet out a direct link, but at ppview.com, pay-per-view, you can see Tennessee play basketball against Gonzaga, and I think a very cool part of it, it's going to help benefit the John McClendon Minority Scholarship Foundation. So get to see a good basketball game, give back at the same time ahead of the start of the regular season, and former Tennessee basketball player, part of the SEC Network, Dane Bradshaw, will be on the call. Dane, great stuff today. Thanks so much for taking some time to join us to talk about the game, what's going on with Tennessee, and hopefully we can talk to you again sometime soon.
Of course. Great talking with you guys. Next time in Knoxville, maybe I can meet you in studio.
Absolutely. Open invitation.
Sounds good. Let's do it.
Yep. Safe travels. Thank you, Dane.